Hi, I'm Greg Lambert with Geek and Review, and I'm here with Nikki Shaver. Nikki, we were talking about deal intelligence. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Greg. One of the hot areas for legal tech over the past year has been deal intelligence. We're seeing in the market that large firms are typically buying into both broad legal AI assistance and also point solutions. And they will typically buy point solutions in areas that are particular priorities for them. Deal intelligence is one of those categories where we've seen consistent interest from firms in spending extra on a point solution. And the reason it's important for firms is twofold. First, it's a problem that firms have been trying to solve for some time. Extracting data from contracts at scale wasn't really feasible previously without training a tool or using one with a lot of pre trained provisions. And the accuracy just wasn't really that great. It's much better now. Second, once you've extracted data points, you can do a lot of different things with them. You can profile matters, which is useful for pitches and proposals, but also to bolster the ability for lawyers to be able to meaningfully search for things like past precedents in similar matters. You can also build what's market databases, which is an essential negotiation and advisory tool for corporate and transactional lawyers, and use the extracted data to inform various other knowledge tools or build knowledge tools. So as a result, we've seen a lot of new providers in this space like Centauri, Hebia, Ivo, and Noetica. We've also seen the AI legal assistant providers like Harvey and Legora build out similar capabilities. So we think this is a really interesting space to watch. Will it be necessary in the future for firms to still invest in one of these separate point solutions, or will development in the broader tools catch up to those point solutions so that firms no longer need the additional license? Stay tuned to developments in that space. And for more analysis on the market, visit us at legaltechnologyhub.com. Thanks,
All right.
Greg.
Knowledge is power. So thanks.
Exactly right.
Welcome to the Geek in Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal industry. I'm Marlene Gaybauer.
And I'm Greg Lambert. And this week we are diving into the world of mobile device discovery with Matt Rasmussen, who we met at Legal Week. Matt is the founder and CEO of ModeOne.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's crazy to think that it was like 6 weeks ago that we were in New York. The time flew there.
Yeah,
It seems like a
time really goes
lifetime, right?
by.
Yeah, for sure.
So, ModeOne is tackling the challenges of collecting data from smartphones for legal and investigative purposes, offering, Matt, what you call the industry's first automated, truly remote collection solution. Now, I know you bring over 2 decades of experience in litigation technology, having worked with top law firms like O'Melveny and Myers and Fortune 500 companies before founding ModeOne. So, Matt, just want to say welcome, and we're glad you're on the show. And I don't know who's upset in the background.
Are we here?
But tell them it's okay.
Yeah. Pancake time. It's Friday pancake day. So
Oh, well, I'd be screaming for it too if someone was making me pancakes. So
Yeah, if my dad was on a podcast instead of making me pancakes, I would be upset. So Matt, as we talked about, you spent years at big law firms like O'Melveny dealing with e-discovery issues. So really, I want to kind of jump right in and see what the light bulb moment was for you in, investing your own savings and your own time into developing ModeOne as what you referred to when we talked as a passion project.
sure. Yeah, no, it all was born out of self-preservation. I was tired of being yelled at all the time that I was over collecting data from people's phones. Um, so I was the light bulb moment. The short story is I was handling a pretty major M&A deal and had a entertainment executive who had some texts on his phone that were client related. I needed to take them from him before he exited the company, and he almost literally threw the book at me when he found out that I needed to make a collection of his whole phone to take it back to the lab to then go find the specific thread I wanted. And so, I just had realized I'd had that conversation over and over and over with my custodians in the past. And what are the things I need to do to make that better. So we dove in, figured it out, and so I decided that was my calling. Jumped into the deep end on the software side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine because I mean it used to be that you literally had to take like everything in order to find the one or two things that you wanted, right?
Uh-huh.
But
Correct. Yep. And so that's I mean that was like it was so nice to actually kind of figure that out because like as a kind of a technologist by trade, right? I'm always looking for ways to make it faster, make it easier, make it less steps, and so being able to kind of solve that challenge was pretty exciting.
yeah,
Well, I know I'd be upset because you'd have this whole collection of dad jokes that you'd have to go you'd have to go through if you were on my phone.
that is true. I've seen her Facebook page. I've seen that.
So, Matt, like traditional mobile forensic collections are often described as slow, expensive, and sometimes over $4,000 per phone. I had no idea,
Yeah, now
and invasive. So, how does Mode One specifically address those core challenges?
Yeah. So, on the speed factor, right? There's a lot of components. If I needed to collect your phone, Marlene, as an example, like I need physical access to the phone. So I'm either shipping a person or a kit to where the phone's going. There's lots of companies that will do phone swaps. So I need Greg's phone. I'm going to send him a temporary phone. He's going to send me his real phone back. So just in logistics, gaining access to the phone, that takes days or weeks, right? And so people can't be as actionable as they want. They can't cross things off the list from like a data preservation issue. So that's how we're really kind of tackling the speed part. We can get connected in about 10 minutes. And so really kind of shrinking a 2-week process down to less than a couple hours has been great. And then the fact that we like being able to be targeted on these devices is super helpful for us to kind of maintain the custodian's data privacy, which is huge. Everyone wants the data that is super private to be maintained that way. But it's also good because we're able to like reduce over retention and over collection from a corporate or business perspective. So that's been great. And then on the expense side, if you take like a traditional workflow, you're getting charged professional services and shipping, collection fees, processing fees, conversion fees to make it human readable. And so that's, like I said before, one of those things I always kind of looked at in my career is how do I shorten the amount of steps it takes me to get to the finish line? How can I automate a lot of those systems? And so being able to do that with cloud computing allows us to give flat fee kind of pricing and really kind of maintain a solid price point that's not going to be super expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, like we said earlier, people hate giving up their phones. My phone's usually not with, less than 3 feet away from me at all
Sure.
times.
Right.
In fact, I tease my wife as like if I don't have my phone on me, I feel naked. Uh,
For sure.
and she doesn't care. I mean, I find her phone laying all over the house. So we have different approaches on this. So
For sure.
you talked about how the cloud computing has really kind of helped with this, and especially with the what you're referring to as the truly remote solution that Mode One brings. And I guess you kind of mentioned this earlier, where there's physical kits or technicians that really had to like be right there with the phone. So can you just kind of walk us through the process that you have and how that kind of differs from what normally happens when it comes to pulling data from a phone?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the big thing for us to talk to these phones, it's still kind of an agent-based thing. So on the iPhone, we route through the custodian's own laptop or desktop. On an Android device, we can operate right off the phone. Um, but usually when we need access to the phone directly, it's because we need heavy processing power to chew through all that data, right? So these phones can be a terabyte large now. And if I needed to process 800 gigs of data on the fly or being collecting that in real time, I need to send like a larger laptop or have a beefier kind of desktop with good processing power and RAM and a lot of space to write that data to. So there's kind of like a high hardware component, right? That's needed to do this. So the the big thing for us is the fact that we can be targeted means that I don't have to pull a terabyte off the phone to then go parse through it. So I can you may have a terabyte of data on your phone, but I can focus on the 10 gigs of data. And then because our agent only plays as traffic cop, we're not processing on the computer, we're not doing a heavy install. Um, it allows us to be like very transactional and very lightweight. And so in cloud computing, if it's going to take me 10 hours to do something, I can throw as many resources as I want to get it done in 5 minutes, and my cost is the same, right? Whether I had one agent do it for 10 hours or I had 10 agents do it for 1 hour, my cloud computing costs are the same. And so that's another one of those things that helps us get through these so fast remotely, is I can in the cloud scale infinitely to chew through it and then ramp back down.
Yeah. What about if like phones are if they're located in another country? How do you handle those sorts of issues? Is there any, regulations or whatnot that you have to face?
So the only regulations that we face would be kind of client driven. So like there may be reasons to keep data in country, right? So being able to spin up a ModeOne environment in Germany to collect phones in Germany and maintain that data in Germany. That's one of the cool things that we can do in the cloud. Um, but we can also route that data to any of the AWS regions we want. So like a fun story I kind of always tell is we had a project where there was 5 board members and they continued to just not collect their phone, not collect their phone. And then they got a court order that you need to produce your phones by Friday. And they were all in Mexico on like a company retreat. And so we were able to get one of their laptops set up on the resort Wi-Fi and pull all 5 from Mexico and route that back to the US so that the attorneys can get through what they needed to go through. So it's kind of cool that we're able to operate somewhat, universally here.
Yeah.
So you're Matt, you're highlighting a key feature is this targeted collection ability. So, we don't want any more books thrown at people.
For sure.
You can filter by date or participant or apps, while ignoring the personal data. And, I imagine this does help balance the need for discovery with, custodial privacy concerns. So can you give us an example of how the new participant exclusion filtering works?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a big debate, right, on phone types. Do corporations want to have like corporately owned device policies? Do people want a BYOD policy? What I'm kind of seeing is BYOD is somewhat the more favored kind of program because there's not a heavy hardware cost, but that opens up some legal risks, right? That now I'm forcing somebody, not forcing them, but somebody's electing to use their own phone, which has a majority of their own data on it. It's a very small amount of data that could be truly like professional communications and things like that. So that inclusionary and exclusionary filter has been so good for that specifically. And so where we use it a lot is we may not know the bad actors or the custodians in play, but we do know the family members' phone numbers, the significant others, the neighbors, things that are absolutely non-relevant. And so being able to come at that at a different way, like, hey, I need all the texts except for the ones that we can corely mark as privileged and personal and non-responsive here. That's been huge. And where we're seeing the biggest door open here is for C-level execs, SVPs, EVPs who, usually have a little bit more weight to throw around that they are or are not going to comply with something or that you're going to have access to their phone. So being able to do this, give them the assurance that like we can segregate the threads that they don't want and collect everything else. That's been huge for us in the last 12 months here.
So going off to a retreat in Mexico is no excuse anymore.
No, not anymore.
You can't get away.
I wanted to pull on the thread that you mentioned earlier about using a number of agents and that, your cloud costs are the same to pull the data in, 10 agents in 1 hour as opposed to one agent in 10. Do you mind kind of fleshing that out a little bit and talk
Sure.
about, how you get your data ready in shorter periods of time and kind of how these agents are set up?
Sure. So one of the things I was trying to learn from, if I go to like an old e-discovery kind of methodology through anything, there's usually a queue of work. So I need email to be processed, and I've got 100 terabytes. My processing team is going to be chewing through that week over week, doing rolling releases because they have a fixed amount of hardware. They have a fixed amount of processing power. They have a fixed amount of data storage. And so in the cloud, we don't have any of those restrictions. And cloud costs are charged on processing time, RAM used, storage used. So in those kind of environments, whether it was a 1 gig phone or a terabyte phone, however long it was going to take to process through that data is a fixed cost. It's going to take X amount of processing power, X amount of RAM, X amount of storage. And so what we've done in ModeOne is it's built to scale resources directly per phone. So we have no queue system. And depending on how much data is there, how much data we have to chew through, how much processing power it's going to take, then the system will ramp up to meet that demand because my cost stays the same and we can chew through it faster. So we allocate more resources, get that cleared out of the queue, and then the resources can ramp back down so that we're back at a baseline level. And so to kind of give you kind of a how that scale works, I handled a pretty major second request that had 400 phones. And for us to do that back in the day, it took me about 7 months to
Cool.
coordinate people and teams and get data processed and in for review. We have a financial services client that we knocked out 418 phones in 2 weeks, right? And so it's just a much different animal now because we can be remote, so we can touch these all at the same time. But it doesn't matter how much data you throw at me, I can still ramp up to meet that demand and get it done in a timely fashion.
Interesting.
I'm curious. I mean, you've obviously addressed our need for speed, but what's the accuracy rate in terms of gathering all of the business data that is needed, and also kind of what's the rate of error in terms of pulling in any type of private information?
So the accuracy rate is 100%, which is great.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know. The caveat is, and this is just some of the wonky things that happen with Android or Apple devices. When people have iCloud sync on, or you're in a group chat that they've sent a message, but maybe your phone's only downloaded the thumbnail until you open that photo. There are going to be some artifacts like that that are stored somewhere else. So for our system, we're doing a completely logical pull directly from the device. So we're not then routing through that to iCloud. We're not checking backups on the computer. So there are some times where somebody will say like, oh, well, I see it on my phone, but it didn't collect the data. And usually when we dive into that, it's some sort of iCloud syncing, kind of issue. So, but we've got some things built into our workflows there where we can audit those things ahead of time when we start the collection. Then we audit it at the end so that we make sure like record counts are matching, attachment counts are matching, that kind of thing. Because, defensibility is such a high bar for us in the industry we're playing, right? So authenticity, defensibility, validation, all those kind of things are super core to what we're doing and built into the product to make sure that we're hitting those.
Mm-hmm. And like beyond the standard litigation, e-discovery, what are some of the other key uses that you're seeing for ModeOne? Maybe, compliance or internal investigations, regulatory matters, something like that.
Yep. So I would say the top two, compliance is the number one for sure. Just
Is that growing? Do you see?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about this a lot, but DOJ and FTC came out with 3 memo updates in the last 18 months on what they want from phones. Phones are absolutely mandatory now. So it's starting at like more heavily regulated corporations right now. We're going to see this trickle down through really any corporation that's got a large device pool, has some sort of compliance regulation or federal regulation against them. They need to be touching these phones in a very scalable way, in a very low touch way. So that's corporate compliance is the huge one. And then I really did, when I built ModeOne, I really thought this was going to be a litigation e-discovery tool. While it's somewhat adjacent, the number two use case is just legal hold generally. Because if you think about if an e-discovery or litigation matter percolates to outside counsel, we're probably dealing with 10 to 20 custodians that we've gone through interviews. We've identified that these are the important people. But when that actual matter hit, or when the company was, thought there's a potential for litigation and had to put some things on legal hold, that net that they cast is much wider. So they may put 100 people on hold for 10 people to actually become relevant in the lawsuit. And so that's the other thing that we're really seeing, is where people are suspending email or OneDrive, things like that. Phones are something that need to be preserved as well. So we're seeing a lot of steps to the left on the actual preservation of that data before it even becomes actionable.
And just to dovetail off that a little bit, because there's been certain kind of encryption texting tools on phones that have hit the news recently. So I mean, a lot of people think of email, they think of text, they think of OneDrive, those cloud storage. As apps kind of evolve, or how are you having to evolve with catching up with this stuff?
Daily. so, so for us, there's three challenges for us. One is app updates, right? WhatsApp makes a change. They don't blast the world saying, hey, all these things have changed in our app, right? So like staying ahead of feature updates, new versions, things like that. The second actually is the emergence of new apps, right? So we can have a good roadmap for texting and for Viber and for WhatsApp, but we could come up with Lambert Chat and it becomes the number one chat app in the world, right? We need to quickly we quickly need to get to be able to support those types of things, right? I am routinely surprised at people ask me if I support apps like QQ, and I feel like they're kind of pulling my leg that these aren't real apps. And then I go look and it's
It's
super
an app.
popular in South Korea, right? So yeah, so there's that. And then the third issue is staying ahead of operating system changes, right? So there's the actual phone that changes as well. One of the biggest things that helps us is because we're touching this data in a logical way, we're not exploiting the phone. We're actually certified Apple and Android developers. So for OS changes, I get new operating system updates about 5 months in advance. So we're on iOS 18 right now. iOS 19 will be scheduled to be released in September this year. We'll have the beta for that OS this month to make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve for when it drops in September and the world's updating. We can have day one support for that system.
Wow. Yeah, it's a never-ending challenge.
It never stops.
Yeah. So you've also integrated with tools like relativity, and I know that you allow for for your clients to keep information in a controlled environment like AWS, or more likely in law firms, it's Azure.
Yeah.
So, how important is it to you that you make sure that you're fitting, the tech that your customers are using into your own ecosystem?
So it's probably one of the top things I've always focused on personally. I mentioned this at the very beginning, but just through me and my career, I've always been looking for the least amount of steps to get from start to finish, right? And when we look at the software ecosystem in e-discovery, there are so many tools that do so many things, right? There's 10 different document review platforms. There's 30 data collection softwares. There's chronology software, depot software, trial software. And none of those things really talk well to each other. So when we're going through the life cycle, if I'm going from collection to processing and processing to review and review to depot and depot to trial, I'm pulling data out, transferring it somewhere, installing it again, taking it out, doing it again. You know what I mean? And so from a human time component, from a time to copy data to what kind of information is being lost, that was such a thing that bugged me, that there wasn't a really good way to have data travel through that whole kind of EDRM ecosystem. So being able to connect and kind of be the hub on the wheel between data sources, bringing them in and then pushing them to where they need to go has been huge for us and huge for our clients, because they're seeing the efficiency gain, that their teams don't have to be bogged down with importing data. They can be doing more, highly relevant stuff to the matter. And so that's such a huge focus for us, and will continue to be throughout the years.
Yeah.
Matt, I'm really interested in what the adoption curve looks like. What kind of clients are most interested, seeing the most benefit? I mean, you launched in March 2022 and were named Legal Tech Startup of the Year in 2024. Has that given a bump or a boost?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I was talking about this a lot in New York, actually. If you look at tech in e-discovery generally, there's I don't know what to call it, kind of a apprehension curve, right? Think about when TAR came out, right? And how many people didn't want to be the first ones to do it? Or Relativity comes out with a new major version release, and no one wants to upgrade because they want to see other people go through it first and think if they're going to suffer through it, or it's something new and something's going to break.
Yeah, we call that racing to second place in the law.
Okay. And I think in the last like 6-9 months, we've really come over that hump and have really kind of supercharged, adoption rates, types of clients that we're closing. So when we started 3 years ago, I was selling to small to medium LSPs, forensics folks, just trying to evangelize the product. Fast forward 3 years later, I've got 3 clients in the Fortune 10. I'm working with major AmLaw 25 firms. I have every major litigation service provider in the country now, right? And so it's not, I understand that ModeOne's not the solution for phones for every phone, but it is a very powerful kind of tool in the toolkit, and we're seeing a lot of that adoption across different markets. And when we get into the corporate side of things, the two main drivers there are that the corporate compliance work, and the legal hold kind of preservation work.
Yeah, I think this may be the longest we've gone in a recent episode before saying artificial intelligence.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Which is great. But I know that you guys have ModeOne has a partnership with StreamView and in implementing some of the AI capabilities into the workflow. So, how does AI work in this type of environment?
Sure. So for us, there's several different ways when we're talking about short messaging, right? So as silly as it sounds, emoji analysis, right? If it's a
Oh my
sexual
God.
harassment case and I want to see what are the top 10 emojis they use in this thread, right? Being able to make those kind of assessments very quickly is one thing. Sentiment analysis and filtering is the other, right? So like pharmaceuticals, like pharmaceutical companies want to make sure that they're checking their sales associates' phones to make sure that they're not making claims that a drug's not addictive, or it's too addictive, or things like that. That's not something that we can be processing that data, have somebody get human eyes on, make a call, report it up. And so being able to run those through AI models quickly to quickly assess, flag, and promote any risks is another huge thing. And then the last thing is just communication analysis, right? So who's talking to who? Are they talking to competitors? Are they trying to be poached? Stuff like that. So there's just a different kind of layer, because there's metadata of like content of the thread, what attachments they're sending, but there's other metadata as well, where those photos were taken, metadata about the apps. And so being able to have the AI layer to be really kind of assessing a very technical data sources is huge for our clients.
Yeah, I like emoji analysis is the name of my new punk band, so I'm gonna
Yeah, that's awesome.
do that.
That's
Or
awesome.
maybe that's the new name of the podcast. We can call it the emoji analysis podcast. What do you think, Marlene?
that would be like fascinating to see. It really would, in terms of what the data shows.
For sure.
So Matt, I want to talk about ModeOne specifically. With being a startup, especially I believe you're probably totally bootstrapping this, right? And then how you're
Yep.
approaching it.
We definitely took, so we took an angel round when we first launched in 22, just so that me and the partners could all leave the comforts of our nests and venture out. But that was to get us about a year's worth of runway. And so we bootstrapped it all the way through MVP, took that angel round, and then have bootstrapped since.
Okay. So what's been kind of some of the biggest challenges you have being a startup in this industry?
Um, so adoption was a big one, right? I feel like as you take on like institutional money or you make bigger raises, right? You're usually being associated with bigger names. They can be louder in the marketing. There's a little bit more faster path to brand credibility, brand adoption, those kind of things. So I think that was it was so important to us because we really kind of wanted to forge our own path here. We think we had a really good product. We had a good way to position this, and so we wanted to set it out on our own. But I think that was a big challenge of just like not being able to be as loud as we wanted to. But it's like 3 years later, it feels like what we've been doing, the seeds we sowed along the way, we're able to do that. Um, and then for us, it's the other challenge is just scale of growth, right? Do we want to hire 10 people? That'd be great, but we're doing it in a sustainable way. And so that's been a challenge for sure, but it's also been a kind of a blessing in disguise for me, right? Because we are a product that can scale so quickly to touch a lot of clients, a lot of custodians, things like that. It's been nice to not rush some of our processes, our workflows to make sure that they're all airtight so that we can be operating at the level we are today. So, yeah, I think those are probably the two biggest things.
So, Matt, we have come to the end of the podcast where we ask all of our guests to pull out the crystal ball and sort of give us their thoughts. So, looking ahead a few years, what do you think is the biggest challenge or change that you see coming for the mobile data discovery and investigations? And, how's ModeOne going to prepare for that?
Yeah, I think I know this is very self-serving. I really do think we're going to be seeing a lot more work on what are required from these phones, corporations demanding more controls over these phones, just because they've been able to kind of skirt away with negotiating away from phones or just preserving SMS texts. And now that federal regulators are now paying attention to this, it's going to trickle down into the private practice and civil matters and things like that. I really do think that phones are going to have to they're going to have these tools that are scaling, touching them fast, being able to really kind of respect people's data privacy in a global kind of market. So everyone always asks me if I'm going to be doing new products, and we always say no. We're digging deep on phones just because there's going to be so many changes that happen over the next 2-3 years. So looking forward to kind of helping meet the demands there.
So the big question is, are we going to go away from bring your own device and then going back to BlackBerry issued from the firms, right?
I was going to say, it's like after that, I'm like, privacy's dead.
Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, if you think about it, if you had 1,000 employees that have an iPhone, that's easily $800,000-$900,000 of hardware, right? And so certain companies, certain industries, absolutely that makes sense. But some can't afford that just as a cost of doing business. And so I don't see it going away anytime soon. I just see a lot more policy kind of revisions on what's company owned and what's private for sure.
All right. Well, Matt Rasmussen, founder and CEO of ModeOne, I want to thank you very much for coming on and talking with us here on the Geek and Review.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this for weeks. So this was a pleasure.
Awesome.
We have too. And thanks to all of you, our listeners, for taking the time to listen to the Geek and Review podcast. If you enjoy the show, share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn and Blue Sky.
And Matt, if listeners want to learn more about you or ModeOne, what's the best place for them to go?
Feel free to email me directly. My email is matthew.rasmussen@modeone.io, or you can visit the website at modeone.io. book a demo, see what we're about. Would love to find some time to talk.
Terrific. And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.